Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Business. I'm your host, Kay Miller, also known as Muffler Mama. Stay tuned as I, along with my guests, give you marketing, sales, and personal branding strategies that will give you an uncopyable advantage. Hey, today I am here with CPA Diana Perkins. And Diana knew from a young age that finance was her calling, which kind of cracks me up, actually. That's nothing like what I thought I would do. But when she was 9 years old, she started charging her sister interest on small loans. Also, very amusing. This year, after 20 years in the corporate world of finance, Diana founded her own company, Trading with Diana. And her mission is to simplify the complexities of financial markets and empower others to navigate the world of trading and achieve financial success. Diana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that intro was a mouthful, but as we talked about before we got on the air, finance is not something, especially for women, I think that we start out thinking, this is what I want to do. So where do you think that your passion came from for finance?
No, that's a great question because I have no one in my life, meaning family, friends, who are interested in finance. I just knew. And I feel like all of us, like we have a seed planted in us. There's something that we're meant to do, something unique that we bring to the table. And for me, it was finance. So as you mentioned, 8 years old, I learned what compound interest was. At 9 years old, I was charging my sister interest on $5 loans. It was my risk premium. 18 years old, I negotiated my first car loan, proving to the sales guy that given the time value of money, the second offer he gave me put me worse off than the first, and I got my deal. So I've always just known there really wasn't that outside influence. I was raised to believe that whatever our interests are, it's myself and 2 older sisters, that you pursue that, right? There are no boundaries. So I have a sister who's an artist, one who owns a tiki bar, and then I was always the finance sister. So it's just inherent. It's who I am. But I appreciate that most people do not feel that way.
A couple things about that. First of all, I want to know, how do you get along with that sister that you charged interest to when you were little?
Yeah. So we get along well. We're closest in age. So like most siblings, we definitely had our quarrels growing up. I will say she was always like the academic and I was always the businesswoman. So we used to play school and I used to charge her. That's my time. I go to school all day. But we get along great now. That's what being an adult will do. And actually behind me is one of her paintings that was actually a little inspirational for me as well.
Which is beautiful, by the way. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you can't see it, but it's abstract, but it's lovely. It really is very cool. Is there a special meaning behind that besides that your sister made it?
There is. All of that is a big part of it, that Lisa painted it. So it was a gift for my 40th birthday a few years ago. And she told me that she painted this during a time when she was going through a big transition in her life. And it's called Redefine. And she told me that Di, it's my family, they call me Di, said, I feel every 2 to 3 years, you redefine who you are, whether it's your career or where you live. And because I have taken a lot of pivots in my life, it has been challenging, but I feel like when you know, like you just know like what direction to go in the moment. And I'd always trusted that. So this painting has a lot of meaning to me, because this year I took really the biggest leap, and probably one of the few times it was an uncalculated risk with CPA. And I attribute it to a lot of the meaning behind this painting behind me.
Yeah, you don't really think of CPAs as risk takers, but of course you're now and haven't been just a CPA. You've always been involved in the markets and in finance. And again, I think that's unusual for women, and I don't know why exactly. I'm also envious that you have had and still do a natural passion, because not many of us do. And you talk about pivoting. You said just recently you've had several pivots, not only starting your business, but some life changes too, right?
Yes, absolutely. So this was 2024 was a big year for me. So this time last year, I felt I had it all, right? The dream apartment, the dream boyfriend who's going to move out here to Boston where I live, and he's going to propose over the holidays. It was a dream come true. So from my past, dream career, leadership role at one of the world top management consulting firms. And then earlier this year, gosh, within about a week and a half, I found myself on a medical leave from work, and I came back and put in my 2 weeks with my job. I had an offer from one of our clients that I ended up rescinding from. I was also talking to actually one of our competitors, also steered away from that. And then I broke up with the person I was with. Other relationships fell by the wayside. And then in 3 months, I launched my business. And that's actually one of the learnings I had this year. You just move forward. Like you just persevere. You just go. And I feel you work with the hands that you're dealt. And I feel like most of us, we're dealt pretty good hands. And you leverage that. You exploit that. You lean into that. And it's not always easy, but you just do it anyway.
We talked about a common theme, and I interview really successful women, and so many of them say, you know what? I have to work through fear. I have imposter syndrome. I'm afraid, but I do it anyway. And Nike really nailed it when they said, just do it, because you can't wait till you're not afraid. You have to do it anyway. So yes, you have quite the pedigree in your background of working for some very impressive companies and working in financial markets. I want to talk a little bit about not only what you help your clients do, because I know that you do coaching, you also have a subscription newsletter. I would like you to just talk a little bit about your perspective, but also what things can the women listening, you as a listener, what can you do to help you succeed in the world of finance and the stock market and all that good stuff? Bitcoin? I don't know.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, I appreciate most people do not have this inherent passion for finance. And so I've made it my mission to help those, empower those who feel that the markets are too intimidating, or I'm not, those limiting beliefs, right? Like you mentioned, imposter syndrome. I'm not a numbers person. I don't have enough money to get started. There's this facade around the stock market that is inaccessible, and it's just not true. I've worked in the finance world for 20 years as a professional options trader, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of traders. And that's what inspired me to work with those who aren't in the markets today. Most of them probably are not finance people. They hear the word stock and they run the other direction. And that's who I want to work with, because the fact of the matter is the barrier to entry is lower now than ever. Most brokerage accounts, 0 account minimum. Start with $50. Start where you are with what you have, right? The other part of it, there are studies backed by Robinhood, Fidelity. Women are actually better investors than men by 40 basis points, which is less than 1%, but we are. So there's that. The idea that you need to be the Wall Street type, or no, you don't. Honestly, 70 to 80% of trading or investing in the markets, it's a mindset. It's greed and fear. It's like organized chaos. So if you can stay disciplined and trade to a plan or invest to a plan, you'll be ahead of actually most men or women who are invested in the markets. And so through my offerings, you mentioned coaching and a weekly stock subscription service, I work one-on-one, privately, small group. The first year, you're going to get me, and probably actually beyond, because I want to hear your questions. But I break down, I demystify that terminology. So you can get on Market Watch and read the articles and know what bull and bear mean. What does that mean? And understand what a stock chart is telling you, and understand the emotions involved and why most traders and investors fail on their own in the markets. So I take those 20 years and I basically condense it into 6 classes where I teach you basically everything I know.
I love it. And one thing I did notice on your website, which I think is definitely meaningful, is that, like you said, you can start small. You don't have to have a lot. And in fact, one of the things that I do is I have an Acorns account. And really, I only put in $10 a month or something. Of course, that's not my only investment. It's fun to watch that grow, and it's just such a small commitment. So I think that is a really big point, that you don't need to have a ton of money to start. And so you've given some resources working with you. Are there other ways that women can educate themselves, just get a feel for how to approach the market?
Well, absolutely. So I would start small. Go on CNBC, Market Watch, become familiar with the terminology. I remember when I was starting, I knew this is what I wanted to do, but those blinking lights on the trading platform, they really scared me. Investopedia is your best friend. So read a couple articles, start to get a pulse on the market, what people are talking about. If you don't understand a term, look it up. There's a great book called Market Wizards. And it's essentially someone very knowledgeable. The author is very knowledgeable about the markets and what works, what doesn't work. And he sought out to interview the best of the best in all these different areas of trading and investments and interview them on what's the secret to making you successful. So I think that's a great place. And then the other thing I would say is my number one rule is don't trade anything you can't afford to lose. So just like you said, start small. You'll trade on a platform, a trading platform. So if you have an account with a Schwab, a Fidelity, it could be it's Cash App or Robinhood. There's so many out there. Research a little bit. It's a very easy process. Open an account, put a few $100s, few $1,000s, whatever is comfortable for you. And you can start trading. They call it paper money. You're not even putting real money on the line. So you can practice that way, become familiar with pulse in the market, what's going on. And then I always say, have a plan. So when you're getting into an investment, have an idea, okay, I'm willing to risk this much in it. And then diversify, meaning invest in different stocks. Don't put it all in black, so to speak. Anyway, I know that was a lot, but
No, that's great. And a lot of this is flying by. I will put all these links in the show notes, that book and just the resources that you mentioned. Market Watch, I don't remember all of them, but I'll put those in the show notes. But I also like the fact that you said don't risk more than you can afford to lose, because it's still, I don't know if I can use the word gamble, but it's not guaranteed for sure. On the other hand, when you look at where the market has come since the Great Depression, way before our time till now, wow, it has, if you stick to your guns, and I think you said don't make emotional decisions, have a plan, stick to it. I think that is fantastic advice, because when we let our emotions get in there and let our emotions get in the way, that causes problems, right?
absolutely. And I don't think it's talked about enough. I think I mentioned this before, but I've always referred to the stock markets as organized chaos. It moves on greed and fear, and it feels volatile, almost irrational at times. But to your point, since the S&P started in the 1920s, over the last 100 years, on average, the market's returning about 9.5%. So that's where the money is. Money's power. That's why I work with men and women, but I want to get more women into the markets because, like I said, it is accessible. We'll want to manage kind of that greed and fear. But if you can stay disciplined and trade responsibly, I'm a CPA, so I'm going to tout risk management. Every trade you go into, know how much you're willing to risk. Don't put it all in one stock. There's natural ways to diversify. Just focus on that capital preservation and then ride the rest up.
So I mentioned Bitcoin. What do you think about Bitcoin?
Yes. So I would say Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, they are on a tear post-election. To me, they might be a bit overweighted. That's my personal opinion, but it's exciting, right? We saw, at 2017, we call it going parabolic. It's just going to the moon, Bitcoin, right? And that opened a lot of folks' eyes. And today, there are so many more cryptocurrencies, and there are a lot of people getting in. That's the demand that you're seeing, right? Pushing the prices up. The one thing I would warn with digital currencies is they're a bit more volatile and a little more expensive to get in and out of, right? So because of that, there's kind of like this additional layer of risk, right? They're still deciding, how do we regulate this? If there'll be regulation, how do we regulate this? But on the flip side, there are new ways that digital currencies are being used, and that's going to put upward pressure. So I would say there's more volatility, maybe a little more expensive to get in and out, and less regulation. So there's these extra layers of consideration. I would say 3%. I see nothing wrong with dabbling, and honestly, investing, trading, it's so personal how much you invest and what you invest in. So you have to stay true to who you are and just do the research, do your due diligence, understand what you're investing in, and then just make sure that you're investing in a few other things as well, because those will rotate, this will rotate, and you just want to make sure that your winners are paying for your losers.
I want to take a quick break to ask you a question. Does your personal brand set you apart and make you unforgettable? If you're not 100% sure, you need my free email series, 5 Steps to a Profitable Personal Brand. Sign up and get a daily email for 5 days plus a bonus, a list of personal branding shortcuts that will give you an uncopyable advantage. Go to beuncopyable.com/5-emails. Definitely diversified portfolios. And so that really is so important because I'm sure you work with people. Some things are meant to go up when the market goes down, vice versa. So that's where you come in and help balance the portfolio, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Understanding those correlations and making sure that you have a balanced portfolio. Like I said, I focus on stocks, but your portfolio probably has bonds, or really the hottest area right now outside of Bitcoin these days is alternative investments. So PE firms getting into real estate. There are different companies where it used to just be the ultra wealthy that could get a piece of the action, so to speak, in alternatives. Now there are more accessible ways to invest in alts. And so that's becoming really much more popular as well with what I'll call the retail investor, which just means it's not institutional, it's you and me.
Okay. I didn't know there was a PE, a physical education stock.
Oh.
I have no idea what PE means, so you'll have to explain. The only thing I could think of is I hated PE.
Oh, touche. Private equity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very simple. That's one thing I do find. We get so used to the terminology in our own world. We got to remember that not everybody knows this, but that's why you're here explaining some of this. And again, I love the resources that you've given. And also, of course, I'm going to put those links in where you have the opportunity to subscribe to Diana's newsletter or possibly work with her. That might be something that you want to consider because you know what? You got to do it right. Let's talk a little bit about this transition into starting your own business. As I mentioned, I did some research beforehand, and women-owned businesses are almost 50% of businesses. And I'm not sure how accurate all the information I have is because I did use AI, and we all know we have to check that. But there are a lot of women starting businesses, especially later in their careers, a new chapter because we're living to be a lot older. I just talked to you about the woman I interviewed yesterday, Danielle Kennedy. You've got to hear that interview. And she's about to turn 80 and her acting career is taking off. And she's going to be appearing. Her latest role is in the TV show, the series, A Man on the Inside, starring Ted Danson. So I just had to throw that out. So given that we are living a lot longer and might want a new chapter, let's hear about what's it like to start your own business. I'm sure it's just a breeze, just in case you might have a tip or two.
Oh, takes one to know one. So I will say this entrepreneurial journey has been very eye-opening. And as you mentioned, I've been in the corporate world for 20 years, worked with some of the largest companies and made a lot of pivots in my career. And everything led to this, but I don't think there's anything that could have prepared me for entrepreneurship. You feel very exposed, very vulnerable, right? Especially when you're very passionate about what you're doing. And I think your your will to do this has to be greater than any fear, or as you mentioned before, imposter syndrome. You build that momentum and you just move forward. So there's definitely been some learning and understanding what the clients that you want to reach, right? The folks that you really want to help, how do you come to their level? And like you said, speak in those terms, PE, right? That was really, and I like those. I need those reminders. We all do, right? In our industry. And it feels just like a very new experience. And I think I had mentioned prior to our taping, I had this idea about 5 years ago originally, right? And I was so excited. I go to a coffee shop every morning and write different blog posts. I created a website and then I got cold feet and I didn't launch. And that's when I went into management consulting. And
like that little nagging voice wouldn't leave you alone, right?
Wrong. And I think it's the limiting beliefs that we talked about. Oh, I don't have enough money. Or we come up with these reasons like that will rate has to be greater. And finally I decided just to take the leap. Now, all those things had to happen in my life for me to make that change, I think. But once you do it, it's very empowering. And you're always finding new ways to reinvent, to brand, and to reach those that you want to reach. So I know this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's been an overwhelming amount of interest so far, but I don't even know what this will look like 6 months or a year from now. So it's very exciting. So to women out there who are thinking about starting your own business, just write down, what is it that lights you up inside? What are you good at? What's your skill? Where's your interest? If you're feeling imposter syndrome, write down all those times that you've met those challenges, that you've looked them straight in the eye, that you received feedback from a client or a partner or a family member or a friend in that area. What do people go to advice to you for? And just do it. You can always go back. You've created this skill, experience, maybe a corporate career. That foundation doesn't break when you make the leap.
So I do have a question for you. You talked about finding the right target that you want to deal with. And of course, we call that in the Uncopyable framework, your moose, right? Those are the ideal person. That's the ideal person you want to work with. So are your moose mainly women that you work with? I know you said men, and of course this works for men too, but are you focused more on women?
So I have a concerted interest, a very strong interest in getting more women into the market. I think though that I find women tend to be the more so those who have maybe like those limiting beliefs around money or have been told those narratives that lead to those limiting beliefs. So I definitely have a concerted interest and strong interest in working with women, especially through my coaching program, right? And I can go into some personal experiences and why that. And obviously, I'm a woman, but some of the things that have been said to me in the finance world, I'm not going to mansplain you. I want to be that person, that safe space that women can go to, ask any question you want. I've been there and I'm going to help you reach your goals. Now, I will say since I've launched, it's all men.
Interesting.
Yes. So the stock picks, it's active traders. I know that's going to be mostly men. I love working with men. I love working with women. And I really want to build that confidence in women. So there are more of us in that conversation, whether it's your financial advisor asking those questions, whether it's at work and all the men are talking about what's going on in the broad market, you can jump right in there. The broad market, yes, and this sector is hot. So I want more women in that conversation. So I would say my moose, it's twofold: active traders, mostly men right now. Love working with men. I want to get more women into that bucket through coaching. Ask me your questions. There's no reason there should be this facade around the market because you can absolutely do it.
One thing I find interesting is that I have quite a few guys that listen to this podcast too. Of course, we have nothing against men. It's just that we have picked that sector of people. Those are our moose. And I think a lot of it is, and you're getting to this too, it's not just the knowledge, it's 100% encouragement. You have to tell people you can do this and you really can. But again, we have that self-doubt. self-limiting beliefs. That's been a common phrase that I've heard through the podcast. So I think that's really good that you're working with men, but I have a feeling you'll be adding a lot of women too and serving them and helping them out.
Absolutely. And I'll say my first client was a male client through my coaching program. And the feedback after our first class, he told me, "Thank you. I feel like I can ask any question and you don't make me feel dumb." And I said, "No, I want to hear those questions. I want to know what's on your mind." Because I know I had the same questions when I was learning. I had so many questions. And it's just very natural. It's a growth. But when you get there, it feels really good and it's empowering. So yeah, absolutely. I work with both.
Yeah. And you said there's no such thing as a dumb question. And one of the things I think of when you say that is that if you're wondering that, so are a lot of other people, right? We all think, oh my gosh, I'm the only one that would wonder this or be afraid of this. So I think that's a good perspective, right? You're not the only one that's wondering this. What do you have anything to say about that? And other than you totally agree that I'm super smart?
Completely agree. And honestly, if someone asks me a question during class, in my mind, I'm just thinking, why didn't I preemptively think of that myself to address? I'm not thinking it's a dumb question. I'm thinking, all right, we're going to double down on this to make sure in finance, you ask questions until it's black and white.
So as we close out this podcast, what would be your closing thoughts? What would you tell the listener that will help them right away?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the question. First of all, I just want to go back to the statistic that you mentioned. 50% of businesses in the past year were started by women. So my closing thoughts are, and maybe I'm being redundant here, but find your passion, go for it, right? As far as we know, we have one turn around the wheel. Go after it now. Don't hold back. And if finance or trading the markets is something that you're interested in, don't ever believe you can't, whether it's that or something else, right, that you're confronted with in your life. I say the greatest antidote to fear is action. So just take that first step, move forward. You won't regret it. You might regret not doing it sooner, but you won't regret taking that step forward. So I say, like you said, Nike, just do it. Just go for it.
That's right. That's a great place to end. And like you said, action is the key. So Diana, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all of that great information and encouragement. And last but not least, all the links will be in the show notes.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Business. If you enjoyed the show, you know the drill. Please like, share, rate, and review it on your favorite platform. See you next time, and always remember to be uncopyable.